Okay, good evening. Sorry to keep you. Hope you're well. Thank you for braving the elements to come tonight. So the first shiur tonight is entitled Eating on Erev Yom Kippur. This Motzei Shabbos and Sunday is of course Erev Yom Kippur, and one of the mitzvahs of the day is to eat. This comes from a Gemara in Yuma. If you look at the top box on your sheet, if you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout. The Gemara in Yuma says on Daf Pei Aleph on the base, Toni Chia Barav Midifti Ve'enisem Es Nafshosechem Batisha, that you should literally afflict your souls on the 9th. Says the Gemara, why the 9th? V'chi Batisha Misanin. Why are you misane? Why are you fasting on the 9th? V'halo be'esor misanin. You fast on the 10th of Tishri. That's when Yom Kippur is. Ela lo melach, but to teach us. Kara oichel v'sheise batshi. Anyone who eats and drinks on the 9th of Tishri, ma'ale olav hakosov, the Torah attributes it ki'ilu hisane chi va'asirius, as if the person has fasted on the 9th and the 10th, a 2-day fast. And this is brought in Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says in Erev in Hilchos Yom Kippurim, in Tov Reish Dalet Siv Aleph, mitzvah le'echol be'erev Yom Kippur. It's a mitzvah to eat on Erev Yom Kippur, laharbois b'su'uda, and to increase our eating. Says the Ramah, you're not allowed to fast on Erev Yom Kippur. Afilu tanis chaloim. Now, normally a tanis chaloim, actually you can fast on Shabbos. Imagine you wake up Shabbos morning, you've had a terrible dream. The halacha is you're allowed to fast on Shabbos. What about Oneg Shabbos? Oneg Shabbos is to eat and to enjoy food on Shabbos. So the Mefarshim explain that for you that week fasting is an Oneg, because you feel so distressed by your dream. The way you feel enjoying Shabbos as it were is to fast, to somehow take away the ill effect of the dream. Okay, and the Mishnah Berurah I've got here explains exactly.
The source in Yuma says that Ve'enisem es nafshosechem means to eat.
Ve'enisem, correct. Now, good. So let's do the Mishnah Berurah. I wasn't going to do it, but obviously HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted otherwise. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Yeah, let's have a look. Tichsev v'nisem es nafshosechem batisha lachodesh be'erev. Hoyoloi lichtov. It should have expressed it. The pasuk should have said, batisha lachodesh be'erev ta'anu es nafshosechem. On the 9th, in the evening, ta'anu es nafshosechem, you should afflict your souls, i.e. by fasting. But since it says v'nisem before the word batisha, then mashma sheis anu batisha, which implies that you should fast on the 9th. But we know that Yom Kippur is on the 10th of the month, lachodesh. V'kiblu chazal the adrabah mitzvah min haTorah le'echol be'erev Yom Kippurim. We know, of course, the mitzvah is not to fast but to eat on Erev Yom Kippur. V'rotza HaKadosh Baruch Hu litzein schar ba'ad ha'achila ki'ilu hisanu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give us schar for eating as if we fasted. Because you can't compare a mitzvah which involves effort and a bit of work. Like Chazal say in the Mishnah Novus, according to the effort is the reward. Had therefore the Torah just said it very simply, like you were saying, eat on the 9th, it's also, who doesn't like eating chicken soup with kreplach on Erev Yom Kippur? That the Torah therefore expresses it beloshen ta'anis, ta'anu es nafshosechem, that this eating, it's as if you've actually fasted, and therefore you get the schar as if you were fasting. Just he finishes off and says you should actually reduce your learning. So leave the Beis HaMedrash in order to have lunch or whatever it may be in order to eat. Okay, so that's really your point is addressed by the Mishnah Berurah. In order to give schar, expresses it in that way that you get schar. It's as if you've actually, it's a chesed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as if you actually fasted, but really the mitzvah is to eat. But if it's expressed in the way of fasting, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you like a free bonus. The bonus is when you eat, it's as if you fasted. Now, just be careful, by the way, the Shulchan Aruch says 4 Simonim later in Tov Reish Ches, when it comes, this is talking about the Sudas and Hafsekes, not generally eating. when it comes to the Sudas HaMafsekes before the Tanis, don't overdo it, and only eat things which are easy to digest. Why? I guess because you don't want to feel indigestion, whatever. But also the Mishnah Mechaber says, "Kadei shelo yeh sovei miskoy kashi yispalel." A person walks into shul kol nidre night, stuffed, and that's not a feeling of the humility and the submissiveness that is the nature of the day. So you shouldn't be arrogant by walking in with bloated. Okay, what is the status of the mitzvah? Eating on Erev Yom Kippur is a mitzvah min Torah, midrabanan. The Mishnah Berurah says eating Erev Yom Kippur is a mitzvah min Torah. That is based on the Magen Avraham. The case of Mishnah Hilchos Nedarim says, however, it is a mitzvah drabanan. Now, another interesting question is, when does the mitzvah actually apply? Is it dafka on the day of Erev Yom Kippur, or does it apply on the night of Erev Yom Kippur, i.e. this year on a Motzei Shabbos? Now, Motzei Shabbos, there's a mitzvah of Melav Malka. So that Motzei Shabbos eating that you have, is that just Melav Malka, or just nashing on Motzei Shabbos? Or is it also the mitzvah of Achil on Erev Yom Kippur? The Magen Avraham says it in paragraph 2, Kol Pam Shemachzikim Halayla Liyontif, whenever we assume the night has Kedusha of Yontov, Ein Neiflim B'mincha. The rule is, you don't do Tachanun in the Mincha before. V'hocha Neiflin, says the Magen Avraham, we do. Shma Minod, Ein Machzikim Halayla Liyontif, and therefore you don't assume the night is a Yontov. And the Aruch HaShulchan also says the mitzvah is only during the day. However, there are others. The Bach, the Birkei Yosef says there is a mitzvah at night too. So in short, is there a mitzvah dafka at day or at night as well? It's a machlokas. But either way, this year, because it's Motzei Shabbos, anyway, there's a mitzvah to eat on Motzei Shabbos, Melav Malka, preferably to wash and to eat. I try and be careful about eating Melav Malka. When I was in yeshiva, going back a few years, I heard a shmooze once from Moshe Aaron Stern. If you've heard of him, remember him. So he once said that he heard from the Chazon Ish, and he said in Yiddish, "Eine was wasch nicht from Melav Malka vet haben charata." Anyone who doesn't wash from Melav Malka will regret it. Why? Because Chazal say that the luz bone, the bone at the back at the top of the spine, which is indestructible, which is where the Tchias HaMesim begins and is imagine DNA. DNA is from a cell in the body, you can reconstruct the whole body. Well, so too, the luz bone is going to reconstruct the whole body when it comes to Tchias HaMesim. And therefore, this bone is only nourished through Melav Malka. And he said a person who doesn't eat Melav Malka will regret it because he's not... One time I was at a Shabbaton, Rabbi Zev Leff was the guest speaker. We were there and we were there and it was a Shabbos in the summer in Bournemouth. And Shabbos went out very late. By the time the whole program finished, it was midnight or whatever it may be. And I wanted to, we had Shalosh Shudas, an hour earlier, whatever it was, but I wanted to have Melav Malka. I'm, particular on it. And if you remember the Normandy Hotel, in the basement, it's dark. There's no light. It's dark anyway. There are no lights on. You have to go down the stairs there. And I remember going down, I don't know where the lights are. It was a dark hall, and I'm sort of trying to find a bit of leftover challah that I can wash. And all of a sudden, I see a figure who's doing the same, groping around, trying to find. And I see Rabbi Leff. And I says, is Rabbi Leff looking for Melav Malka? He goes, yeah. So he said, I said, is the Rav makbid about it? So he said, yeah. He says, I'll tell you why. Because one time when Moshe Aaron Stern came to the Moshav, in Matid, where Rabbi Leff is the Rav, and he spoke, and he said, in the name of the Chazon Ish, Eine was vashnish from Melav Malka vet haben charata. So I said, me too. That's where I get it from. So in any event, this Motzei Shabbos, there's a double mitzvah to eat. Either, or certainly Melav Malka, and possibly also, according to some, the mitzvah of Achilas Erev Yom Kippur. What is the reason for the mitzvah? Why is there a mitzvah? You're welcome to tell them to come in. If they're waiting outside, if they want to join, they're welcome to come in. What is the reason for the mitzvah? Why is there a mitzvah of Achila on Erev Yom Kippur? So two reasons are given. One reason that is given is to have strength for the fast. In order to fast well, you need to eat in order to give you koyach. And therefore, Rashi in Brachas suggests that it's in order to have strength for Tanis. Others, Rabbeinu Yoina in Shari Tshuva says, every Yontov needs a celebratory meal. And Yom Kippur is included. It's just that we can't eat on Yom Kippur. And therefore, this is the celebratory meal of Yom Kippur, to eat on Erev Yom Kippur. So those are the two reasons. Now, there's an interesting nafkamina between, what is a nafkamina? What is the practical difference between the two? Whenever you have two reasons, you're always trying to figure out, What's the practical difference? In other words, I'll give you a scenario where if the reason is 1, then yes or no, and if the reason is 2, yes or no. So a good enough gemina would be, what about a chole who is unable to fast for medical reasons on Yom Kippur? Have they got a mitzvah on Erev Yom Kippur? So if the reason is to give you strength to fast, then clearly there's no need to. If the reason, however, is celebratory meal, well, it's their yontif as well. So this, and in fact, the Ksaf Sefer says, the Netziv in Hamek Shaila says that therefore, according to Rashi, there would be no need to eat if the whole thing is to give strength. However, the Netziv says, and I've got it there, the Ksaf Sefer says, he argues with the Netziv, and he says that that's not true. Because we don't, according to the tzad that it's a mitzvah deraisa, we don't paskin based according to the reasons. So maybe you think this is the reason, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, eat on Erev Yom Kippur. Maybe the reason is because to give you strength to fast. But we can't paskin based on that reason. And therefore, maybe it's not the reason. So, and therefore, the Ksaf Sefer says, if that's in the bottom box, that even if a person is unable to fast because he's a chole, he should still eat on Erev Yom Kippur. Just as the final few points, if you look at the top of the next page, the Aruch HaShulchan, he says something very interesting. V'lochein mitzvah le'echol v'lishtos b'Erev Yom HaKippurim. There is a mitzvah to eat and drink on Erev Yom Kippur, v'lismoyach boi, and to be in a joyous mood, v'yeh levavenu batuach sheyom HaKippurim ya'aleh lonu l'toiva v'livracha, that a person should be confident that, please God, it will be a good and blessed year. V'shakodish Baruch Hu yimchal avaneseinu, that He will forgive our sins, v'yachtoim aleinu shana tova muvaracha, and it will be a good and a blessed year, v'eichlin dogim u'basa k'meh b'yontov, etc., etc. So that's what the Aruch HaShulchan writes. The Arizal says, interestingly, anyone eating for the Shem Shemaim on Erev Yom Kippur can atone for any spiritual imperfection connected with his eating during the year. So that should go through our minds as we're eating our chicken soup with kreplach and whatever it may be, that a person eating the Shem Shemaim actually can be very powerful. So you'll see in a second from my final point. I remember as a student in Hasmonean many years ago, we used to have a teacher called Jack Aldman. Remember Jack Aldman? Oliver Shalom, a wonderful man. So he was my math teacher, but he would always end the week with a vart on the parasha or whatever. And I remember one year, must have had him on Erev Yom Kippur, when he was coming up to it, and he asked the following question. He said to us, which is harder, to eat on Erev Yom Kippur or to fast on Yom Kippur? So, of course, everyone would say, eating on Erev Yom Kippur is much easier, yeah? So he said, no. He said, eating on Erev Yom Kippur, who doesn't like eating on Erev Yom Kippur? We all eat on Erev Yom Kippur because, who doesn't like all the nice food we eat? Fasting on Yom Kippur, why are we fasting on Yom Kippur? We're fasting on Yom Kippur because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says fast. So we are doing it l'shem shamayim. But when we eat on Erev Yom Kippur, are we doing it l'shem shamayim because there is a mitzvah to eat, or because we like chicken soup with kreplach? In other words, l'shem shamayim is, why am I doing this? Am I doing this as a mitzvah, l'shem shamayim, to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or because there's a famous ma'aser that the one time the Golker Rebbe had a guest, and for a Shabbos meal. And this guest, I don't know if he made a big show of it, but every spoon that he ate, he said, L'koved Shabbos Kodesh. Right? I know people who do this. L'koved Shabbos Kodesh. And the Golker Rebbe, I guess, detected a sense of a little bit of insincerity. And he said, so he took his spoon, and he said, L'koved mein boich, in honor of my stomach. Right? In other words, are you doing this properly L'shem Shemaim, or is it just for your, now? That's quite a lofty level already. To do things L'shem Shemaim, to eat on Erev Yom Kippur L'shem Shemaim is a lofty level. So therefore, Jack Aldman always used to say that fasting on Yom Kippur is much easier because we're doing it L'shem Shemaim. Eating on Erev Yom Kippur, to do it for the right reason, is much harder. But be that as it may, what have we seen? That the mitzvah of eating on Erev Yom Kippur is possibly a mitzvah deraisa, possibly certainly either deraisa or drabanan. Does it apply the night before? There's a machlokas this year. We're covered because there's certainly a mitzvah of malav malka. And the two reasons given for it is to have strength to fast, or it's a celebratory yontif meal. The nafkamina could be that someone who doesn't need to fast on Yom Kippur, but the Ksaf Sefer says that either way a person should eat. And like the Aruch HaShulchan says, mitzvah lechol v'lishtos, and like the Arizal says, you can atone for any Averas in connection with food over the course of the past year.